and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, my fellow Hearthian, Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Oh, doing great. I'm just going to go play hide and seek with this kid over here. I'm going to...
Well, he's dead. Luckily, we have another host joining us today. It is the last remaining member of the... Okay, I've never had to say this word out loud. Is it Nomai?
That is how I say it. So yes, that's the correct way to say it.
We are joined by Daniel Freeman. Welcome back to the show, Daniel. It's been a long time since we've had you on the show.
It has, I think, years.
I think you're right. Somehow,
the COVID era just sort of like compressed and was lost to time. But
that is true.
Been a while. Hello.
Hey, welcome, Matt. You're not actually dead, right? You're still gonna do the podcast.
Yeah, I'm back.
That was actually a really good impression of the sound effect.
I agree.
You notice how the gasp sounds different depending on how you died?
Yes. Yes.
That comment will make no sense to people unfamiliar with the game we're talking about, but
so I guess we should get into it. This week on the show, Matt finally played Outer Wilds, a game I have been telling him to play for how many years now, Matt? At least three. At least three. You have been, and I trust you. It's just that I have not that much time for stuff. And then Daniel also added, which is like why he's here, is he seconded it, and I don't know. I found the time for it. Let's just say that. Yeah, I'm gonna choose not to be offended by the fact that it took Daniel telling you to play this game for you to finally do it. I mean, he is your brother, so I guess like fine, begrudgingly fine. I'll take that.
It's
very convincing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean,
he knows my buttons really specifically, but yeah, anyway. Yeah.
No, that's fair. I can't compete with that. There's nothing I can do. I think, normally I think we're going to have like a full discussion of the entire game that has some key conversations about spoilers and things like that. But I do want to kind of start the conversation today without spoilers, because I think there's a very good chance that a sizable portion of the people listening to this podcast have perhaps never played this game and just like saw this title and said, oh, interesting, and click. So I don't want to spoil any of the game for them. So I think we'll start and have like a brief section at the beginning where we just talk about our overall vague thoughts of the game, and then we can move into spoilers and talk about the things that we like that it does, the brilliant things this wonderful game does. Does that sound good to y'all?
Yeah, I dig it.
Works.
All right. Then we're going to wrap everything up with me talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, because Matt, Deadpool and Wolverine came to Disney Plus on Tuesday, and I watched it finally. And let me tell you, I got some thoughts. About things.
All right. I watched it a while back. I watched it when it was out in theaters, and I had some thoughts too. So I'm glad we get to have thoughts together with words.
I haven't watched it, and I'm going to have thoughts as well.
It's the holy trinity of internet conversation. All right, but first, let's get into Outer Wilds. Matt, what the hell is Outer Wilds?
Outer Wilds is a 2019 adventure video game developed by Mobius Digital and published by Annapurna Interactive. The game follows the player character as they explore a planetary system stuck in a 22-minute time loop that resets after the sun goes supernova and destroys the system. Through repeated attempts, they investigate the alien ruins of the Nomai to discover their history and the cause of the time loop.
A pretty good summary, I think. That was from Wikipedia. What do you think of that one? Is it an accurate kind of elevator pitch level description of what this video game is?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the best you can do. Although the thing is, it's so unique in so many ways. It's like you can't really elevator pitch it. It's such an experience. But yeah, sure. It's not too bad.
Yeah, I remember we had this discussion. I think we've even had this discussion multiple times, possibly on Freeman Bros, where we feel like the word game doesn't really do service to the breadth of experiences that can be captured by things that are called games. Because like I tried to play Outer Wilds probably 10 years ago when I was in grad school, and I played it for like 3 minutes, and I just bounced completely off of it because I was looking for my like first person shooter. Not 10 years ago. That's a good point. Must have been 5 years ago. how in the
Probably
world did
right
I
when it came out, I'd say.
probably right when it came out. Yeah, I immediately bounced off. It was extremely not the tempo of what I wanted to play, and I didn't even get like anywhere into the game. But it's because it's not really trying to do something like a first person shooter is trying to do, or like an RPG is trying to do. I think if I had to describe it, it's like a mystery uh gravity or mystery physics platformer kind of thing. Like
I
that's
hope that's a new genre because
slash novel.
I think that's a perfect explanation of the game. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess if we're all going to take a stab at it, I think the exploration and sort of archaeology of it was the most fun aspect for me personally. Um, I guess like this is just a fun little quirky autobiographical detail is like I used to be really interested in the concept of these like LucasArts games like Myst or this game. I think it was called The Dig, which
Oh,
I don't
I
even know
loved
if
the
I.
dig. Oh my
It,
gosh, I
it,
loved the dig so
it,
much.
so The Dig, I don't even know if I like ever beat The Dig actually, but the concept of The Dig is like your astronauts exploring the ruins of an alien civilization, basically, which is kind of what this is. I mean, this is exactly what this is. But this is like the best possible version of that idea,
Yes.
and it's just absolute crack to me. I adored that aspect of this game in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think I played this game. I don't remember how long ago, but at Doof Media, Elliot and Ruben created something they called the Game Club, and this was I think the first or second game of the Game Club. I'm not sure exactly when. It was one of the very very early ones, and it was I think kind of the best example of what that show was and could be, because it was just a bunch of people in our community all playing this game at the same time and swapping stories and experiences, and I played it then, and there's one thing with video games, like I talk to people about this a lot, like you and I, Matt, and Daniel too, have had many many hours of conversations about MMORPGs and what has been lost in that genre. And I think one of the things that we've said, and I think remains true, is this idea that like video gaming and like what gamers want and do in games has fundamentally shifted from when we were kids. It's just like what gaming is, like what the culture of gaming is so different now. That I really thought that I couldn't fall in love with a game like this and enjoy like discovery and exploration in a way that I ended up doing with this game. I just thought that part of me was dead and gone, and like I was like a hardened, like uh, pessimistic gamer that's just like I just want to go to point A to point B, just do quests. I need to be told where to go and what to do, and I'm going to do it, and it's fun. This is fun. I'm pretty sure this is fun. Um, but for whatever reason, this game like completely recaptured this feeling of exploration and discovery and just not having a goal in mind, not having like obviously there is a final goal there, like you can beat this game, but just like flying around the solar system, landing on new planets, experiencing whatever quirky physics thing is on that planet, while also, yes, at the same time, learning the story of this ancient civilization and what happened to them and why. It's just like it just grabbed me, and I became like the ideal version of what I want to be when I play a video game, which is just not caring about the objectives or the goals or the points or yada yada yada, or the most efficient route or the best build or all these things I do in games now. It just like vibed, and
Yeah.
I don't quite know how the game managed to do that. I've been thinking about this basically nonstop since I played the game, and I'm just not sure. I mean, there's a bunch of little things that they did, but how it all adds up into this game just like rips apart your preconceived notions about what a game is and should be.
Yeah, I think they are very intentionally through game design choices, like sculpting it in a way that dodges a lot of failure modes of similar types of games.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely agree that this is like it's very unique. Like I don't think there's another game like Outer Wilds. Honestly, like I think
Mhm.
they kind of came out of nowhere, completely nailed this type of game, and there has not been a type of game like this since that nailed it as well as they did.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say about me too is I really don't like the time loop concept in video games. I find it exhausting and frustrating at times. Like there's a ton of people out there that really love Majora's Mask. And I've just never really been able to get into that game because I feel like the time loop creates pressure in me that like saps my enjoyment. I feel the ticking clock, I feel the approaching time, and I just like don't get to like having a ticking time in an exploration game seems counterproductive to me because like you just feel like you're not getting to really just spread out and explore because the time is ticking. But once again, this game has that, and yet I don't mind, and it doesn't do that for me. I don't feel the oncoming tick of time as I'm just exploring. Like sometimes you'll just be exploring and then you'll hear the music play and you're like, "Oh, no." But like I never felt like that the encroaching dread of, "Oh, I must be almost out of time." I guess that's not true. I did feel that, but it never hampered my ability to just want to explore because I think the game is designed like you just get back into the loop so fast and you really don't feel like you've lost progress at all, even
Yeah.
though you're having to start the day over, or I guess the 22 minutes over.
Yeah. The gameplay synergizes perfectly with the story to a degree that just rarely happens, I think, in games
Mhm.
where what I mean by that is the the pleasure of exploring all these planets in the sense of like just the tactile and sensory experience of flying around, flying your ship, uh, uh, crawling through ruins, doing platforming puzzles so that you can find out a little piece of information. That is evolving the story because the story is you putting together the story on your own by following the clues and your own curiosity and your own impetus to explore. I mean, it's funny. It's an ergodic story, just like uh, uh, what's that book we just read, House of Leaves, where like I think it's one element I definitely wanted to talk about with y'all is how the game is slightly different for everyone who plays it,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
the order in which you find out information is different and changes your feeling about things quite a bit. I'll just say, I guess a spoiler, but just like it, I there are all these different threads of things that you are interested in and finding out about gradually, but and you don't even necessarily know like when you're going to find something out, right? So like one thing that I didn't discover until very late in the game was finally figure out how to get under the surface of the comet. Um, and for me, that really changed my perception of the story, and I'll explain why. So, for me, the whole game, you're kind of developing this theory of what's happening, and my theory was, okay, obviously the Nomai are causing this time loop, and obviously the Nomai caused the destruction of the sun, and obviously, um, this is related to why all the Nomai basically seem to have died on their feet wherever they were standing. They they in their hubris and arrogance accidentally caused the destruction of their own species, and then their leftover machinery is now causing the sun to explode. This was like so obviously the way the game was set up, right? And then you get under the surface of the comet and you find the exploded canisters of dark matter, ghost matter. And I didn't even like, as soon as I saw that, I didn't even need the game to explain it to me. I was just like, oh no, oh no. They like, it's totally unrelated. It's just a horrible, pointless accident. And that was so sad to me because I had gotten involved in all of the like little dramas of all the Nomai and their back and forth letters to each other. And the idea that they were just like, actually, I had them all wrong. They were these intrepid scientist engineers trying to do this amazing thing, uh, uh, Star Trek explorers, and they just died pointlessly. And I was just like crushed by this. Um, and then Scott, I guess one funny thing is you told me that you found that out way earlier in the game. I
Yeah.
think you told me
Mhm.
that. So
Yep.
it's like
Yep.
it's just so interesting how these things can change your perception of how things are evolving.
Yeah, and isn't it true? It's been a minute since I played this game, so please tell me if I'm wrong. But isn't it true that the sun supernovaing has nothing to do with what the Nomai did? It was just
Yeah.
this is just the sun's time to die.
Yeah.
So like
it was its natural ending. Yeah.
yeah, so like both tragic events of the story have nothing to do with the characters in the story. It's just things that just happened, right? I think, which is
Yeah.
a powerful message ultimately about what I think the game is ultimately trying to do. I think it's such a great thing to bring up, Matt, because I actually love this, and this is one of those things. I think this game, like the construction and design of this game, is actually like secretly super complicated, because I think they have to construct a story that works from every single angle, right? Because they truly don't know what information you're going to learn first and second. And I will say there are moments in like it isn't perfect, right? There are moments in the game where I like got to a place I had never been before, discovered a thing, and learned that the thing I was supposed to learn at this new place was something I had already figured out somewhere else, right? And
Yeah.
so you get that feeling of like, oh, that was pointless. So that like sometimes happens, but overall, like the story and the storytelling, I think is remarkable how they've constructed it to where, yes, I think it'll play off you in different ways, like you just talked about, Matt, but it's functional. It works from every angle. It works from every direction. You can truly go anywhere you want and play the game in any order, and the story still functions. It's
Yeah.
remarkable.
They're a little bit clever too with some things where like I will say I never actually felt upset when I like filled in a box that I kind of already knew the answer to. But they also sort of construct certain plot details behind what are essentially physics puzzles that you kind of aren't even pointed in the direction of unless you're like going along one of the spokes of the wheel. Like how
Sure.
much did y'all rely on the like the in-game kind of breadcrumb system for finding more clues depending on where you were?
I would say a fair amount. Like I actually like I think that's a perfect mix of not holding your hand, but
Yeah.
also giving you something.
Yeah,
That like
yeah.
because I really I think if I read somewhere, and I don't remember where I read it, but like early versions of the game didn't have that in the game,
Yep.
and they felt that it was just kind of at times too overwhelming for players, and they couldn't track and remember every little piece and breadcrumb. So they added that, and I do think it's this perfect in between space between being led and getting to go off on your own. So I used it
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there were times in the game where I was just stuck, and I was just like, I am just not sure what to do next, and where to do it, and opening up the computer and seeing, oh, there's some mysteries in this area, at least let me say, okay, I'm going to go on my next loop, I'm going to go to this planet in that general area. I know there's something there I have not yet discovered, and I'm just
Yeah.
going to tinker around for a bit. And that's really how I used it. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, same. I mean, I spent a lot of the time just exploring based on my own. Like, I haven't been to the water planet in a while, and then I would just go there. But then sometimes I would get really kind of obsessed with some particular puzzle and bang my head against it. And then when that happens, the computer is super helpful for the reason you just said, where it'll be like, "Hey, idiot, you haven't checked out this moon. Check out the moon," and then you'll figure out something that you didn't know that'll help you with the puzzle. I guess this feels related. Like there was really only like maybe one or two times that I really felt frustrated, like to the point where I stopped having fun briefly. And when that happened, it was because I had in my head like, okay, I get it. This is how you solve the puzzle, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would try it so many different ways and be like, oh, why isn't it working? And it's like, it's just, that's not it. You're just wrong. But the thing is, in retrospect, I don't really hold this against the game, because like it's fair. It's like
Yeah.
you're this guy trying to explore this universe, and like there's no rule that says that the puzzles have to offer themselves up to you. Like you could totally just have the wrong idea. Like that's a fair thing to happen in a world like this. So, despite how annoyed I was at various times, in retrospect, it's like I don't think I would have changed a thing. Actually,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree. Like I feel like the game actually teaches you its own sense of like how hard things should be. So it's like by the time you figure out, you're like, oh yeah, that is I was trying something that was just didn't make any sense in hindsight. And it's
Yeah,
like that's giving you that rope is actually part of what makes the like the difficulty, like the necessary difficulty of the game there.
Yeah, it's really funny because I have like the minute you said that, Matt, I like immediately clocked back to my big moment of frustration in the game, which was getting to the quantum moon. And it's funny, like I knew how the quantum stuff worked in the game. I just didn't, for whatever reason, piece it together exactly how to do it. So what I discovered, and I can't remember the names of the planets, but it's the one that it's slowly like collapsing into the center. When I was
Brittle
exploring
Hollow.
that planet, yeah, Brittle Hollow, thank you. That was like the second planet I went to, and I discovered, those like shuttle launch bays where like it would shoot a rocket up, and like I convinced myself, I think because like maybe I read something that said this is one of the ways they got to the quantum moon. I convinced myself that I had to find a way to enter the correct coordinates for the quantum moon on that thing and shoot and get inside of it and then launch it into space. And that's how I would get to the quantum moon. And I tried that forever, like for like multiple loops. I was just going back to Brittle Hollow and just tinkering with it. And like there was a part of me the whole time that was like, I'm not sure if this is right, but there was a greater part of me that said, no, this is the way you do it. This is definitely the way you do it. And so I really just banged my head against that forever, and it's just a misunderstanding I had with the game.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
I just want to share mine since I think it's amusing for people to hear that my like frustration point was thinking that the way to get underneath sort of the barrier layer on Giant Steep was to get inside like the hollow wooden logs on the one island that has the frozen jellyfish on it, because I put together the clue that was like, okay, the one guy told me that the jellyfish are the key. So there's the frozen jellyfish on this island, and it has something to do with like being inside something, and thus you're protected. So I'm going to get inside the log, and then when the tornadoes pick up this island and then drop it, it'll drop through the current, and I'll swim out of the log, and I'll be under there. And I was like, I must just not be getting the timing right, and that was stupid. And it's like, I like what Daniel said about the game teaching you how hard it should be, because it's like there's really very few places in the game where like the timing has to be that precise. There are like 2 places where the timing does have to be that precise, to be honest. But yeah, that was dumb. But in retrospect, I was like, okay, yeah, I see why I thought that. But
it's always so fun because like you can see how you took the right clues and just took them to the wrong place, and that's like basically the same thing with me.
Yeah.
It's just so fun, and it's not like I don't think they build that kind of stuff. Like I wouldn't call that stuff red herring or anything. It's just like how the brain works, and I think the game is designed well enough to where that doesn't happen too often. Like I think you're thinking of one instance. I'm thinking of an instance. Daniel, I don't know if you have any. But
I have a perfect example of this. So I mean, we're deep in the spoiler section now, right? So like,
yeah, I mean, we didn't like clearly demarcate it, but oh well.
Big spoilers ahead. So we were trying to try to figure out how to get into the core of Ash Twin. Whichever of the twins is the one that you're trying to get into the middle of. And there's the one building that is like broken, that has the teleport pad on it. And I was convinced that the way to get into the center was you had to wait until the sand stopped flowing from whichever of the twins it's flowing from. And then, because at the end of a 22-minute cycle, the sand stops flowing between them. So now you're not going to get like buffeted by the flow of sand. And then right at that moment, you'll have a window where you can like jump onto the teleporter pad, and then you won't get like carried off by the falling sand. They've timed the game perfectly so that when the sand has stopped falling, the next time the teleporters align, when the other twin comes around, the supernova hits you right as that teleporter would go off. It's like deterministically set to make it not possible. It's like it even starts teleporting and then it doesn't do it. So That was mine, and I tried that like
That's
5
really cool.
times, and it's like, why isn't it working? Um,
I
turns out
love
there's
that.
a.
That's really cool.
I was just doing it wrong. Is the answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's just
hard.
it's just such brilliant design, like that they've thought. It feels like they thought of everything. Everything is like perfectly synced, and I just want to like talk about the technical side of this game. That a lot of this stuff is like entire game has to be loaded at the same time because all of the stuff is running like sequentially with
Yeah.
each other. Like
Yep.
it's all set on a timer and running. So like they can't do the thing they do a lot in games where they cheat, where they just only you only load the sections of the game that you're in when you're in them. And everything else is just not loaded until you approach it. But and I think they kind of do that, but they still have to have like the physics of everything running still.
Hmm.
So like the engine has to be still running the physics and all the calculations of everything that's happening in every single speck of the solar system simultaneously at the same time. And oh, have we mentioned that Mobius Digital, the team that created this, is like 10 people, and the main designers of this game were like 3 guys, one of whom is the primary guy that did this, that like created this whole thing in college and then refined it after college and eventually released it. Like it's a very
Yeah. Okay.
small team of people. It's
The like
remarkable.
the whole story of the creation of this game just doesn't make any sense at all. It's like one guy's college project that like, or him and his team in college, they make this amazing award-winning game, and then like it's kind of just like a kitchen sink of cool things that they like
Yeah.
wanted to try, and then from that is sprung this like much more massive, not AAA, but like a hefty sum of money thrown at them to like polish it into like a full game sort of story. Like I don't like y'all have talked about like seat of the pants versus like actually like diagram stuff out and plan writers. This is absolutely seems like a seat of your pants game, but at
Yeah.
the same time they like hardened it into this like perfectly crafted and well designed, extremely difficult like technically achievement, and I don't understand how they pulled that off.
I have
Yeah.
no idea. It's remarkable. It's remarkable in every way. Like that the writing is as good as it is, that the design is as good as it is, that the tech is as good as it is, and that the game plays and feels really good. Like all of it's just absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
I can like it's been, gosh, I don't know how long it's been since I played the original game, but I still think about it constantly because of all these great things coming together.
Like the simplicity of it is what blows me away, because it's one thing to talk about, a really, really complicated game with a lot of mechanics. And it's like, you got like 2 mechanics,
Yeah.
like in terms of what you control is what I mean. Like you've got your probe, you've got your spectroscopes,
Radio stick.
radio stick. I mean, and then there's the spaceship. Obviously, is like your mode of transportation, which I guess that's a whole nother thing. But the point is, like, they get so much mileage out of these tiny little things, or just like the flashlight. How much how much play do you get out of the fact that you can turn your flashlight off and on to reset quantum objects? Like, that's it's so clever. Like the whole the kitchen sink idea, like each planet is kind of its own fun environmental puzzle gimmick thing, and
Yeah.
like each of them is like equally fun somehow. Like normally in a game, like in a game that tries to do this sort of thing, usually it's like, yeah, that one planet, that was obviously the good one, and all the rest were just kind of there. But it's like, I love Dark Bramble, I love the water planet, the islands shooting up and down. I love Brittle Hollow, where you're crawling around and gravity is topsy turvy and the planet's falling apart as you go.
And there's a black hole in the middle.
Yeah.
Black
And
hole
the
in the
first
middle.
time you miss your jump and go
Yeah.
like, and you're like, oh, well, this is it. And then suddenly you're halfway across the solar system. You're like, what the fuck is happening?
You could almost
Yeah.
just go through like every planet, and we could just, I'm not suggesting we do this necessarily, but like every planet's gimmick could support its own fun conversation about how like just the hourglass effect, meaning that you have to like explore this one planet while the sand level is changing, and that like God, like it's all so clever,
Yeah.
so good.
And I mean, Dark Bramble like was some of the most intense gameplay I've ever experienced. I loved it so much. Just like the first time you go there, and like when you go to Dark Bramble, knowing how the whole gimmick with the why can't I remember what they're called? The anglerfish.
Yeah.
When you know how the gimmick with the anglerfish works for the first time, and so you're going there with the intent to actually like explore around, like the tension of that is so good. It's so good. Like I just have very distinct memories, and I streamed playing this game, so like I think it only added to the tension that I knew people were like watching me do this and judging me about my skill and ability to navigate this planet while avoiding the anglerfish. And there's moments where you fire your thrusters, try to aim to where you're going, and then you see the fish and like just like oh I'm starting to veer off course a little bit, I need to adjust, but there's a fish right fucking there. And then you fire a little bit, or you think you get close enough, and then just nail your boosters and like feel it chasing after you. Like it's just like it perfectly handled, like almost survival horror tension thing in the middle of this game, just in the middle of this exploration wonderful story game also has this. And then of course like sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, which is crazy in a game where there's literally no stakes to dying.
Right.
It's like, how did they manage that?
I don't know. Yeah, like especially in when you finally have kind of cracked what the end mode of the game is, right? And you're trying to do that. You're in a race against time because the game is designed to where once you figure this out, you're on the clock trying to do all the steps you need to do to get the thingy and the thingy. And so you're trying to fly through Dark Bramble as fast as you can, while still dodging the fish, and it's just like incredibly tense and wonderful. The music, the second you take the I don't remember what the device is called at this point, but the second you take it out of it where it goes, that the music kicks up, because it's like, okay, let's do it, let's go. It's just like it all works so well. And we haven't talked about the music yet, but the soundtrack of this game is incredible. Just another one of those things that it's way better than it has any right to be, but the music is just fantastic.
I don't know how they knew how to do that. It's just like when you have the music there for the entire game, just like woven throughout the gameplay as like the device by which you find other people on other planets, as cues for like the different sorts of characters. It's just like, and it's been there the whole time, the entire time you're playing it. So it's just like it really, really deeply intertwined into like the emotional core of the game. And it's just also not bad. It's like actually very, very well produced and like catchy, and you don't get sick of it. It's like it nails everything here.
Yeah.
And it ends up beautifully paying off in the final moments of the game too, like because it almost becomes about the music at the end, in a way that I don't know if I was fully expecting.
I do want to talk about the music, but I just want to use this as a bridge to talk about just the profound pathos of this game for a second, because this was not what I was expecting from an exploration game, like to be just deeply saddened. Because so the reason the music is like the link to me is I remember, the first time I tried to chase the Nomai probe out into deep space, which I think everyone does at some point, because it's like maybe it's going somewhere interesting. And then you turn around and you're looking back at the solar system, and you on a lark, because there's nothing else to do, you turn on your radio scope, and you can hear, and you realize like, oh, I'm far enough away that all of my friends are basically in the same place from my perspective. And so I can hear the whole song. If I just point my radio at the solar system, I can hear everyone's instruments. And then when the supernova happens, you hear each instrument stop one by one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's so sad, even though it's a time loop and you're going to reset it. But then the thing is, like, it's not like then the game ends. And okay, so what I'm trying to get to is really the whole game, I thought the game I was playing was like, okay, the puzzle here, the meta puzzle, the puzzle of the game is I'm going to figure out how to stop the sun from exploding.
Yes.
I'm going to save
Yes.
everyone. And it's so sad. For me, I was so sad when I realized, and this is kind of prior to the end of the game, like you're probably not. That's probably not where this is going to go. What you at a certain point you kind of lose your sense of what you're going to do, and you realize like, well, I'm an explorer. That's what I've been doing this whole game, is exploring. My character is an explorer. So even if I don't think I can save the solar system, I can finish the ambition of the Nomai, which was to find this mysterious, interstellar object. And so I can be an explorer and I can get the answer to that question. And then then you realize, and then the game ends the way it ends. And it's like, I was so not sad. Like I'm very carefully not using the word like depressed, because I wasn't like, I hate this game because it made me feel bad. It's like, no, it was like the purest, cleanest sadness I've ever experienced from a work of fiction. I don't know. Like, it really was powerful for me. I almost can't overstate it.
This is something I actually wondered how well would work on you or not, because I find the end of this game incredibly beautiful. Yes, tragic. Yes, very, very sad. But I think the overarching message of the game is that like things end. There's nothing we can do to stop that. But perhaps some beautiful new song can come from all this loss and sadness. And that's, I know, like I've talked with you many times, Matt, about like our views on death and the inevitability of it sometimes. And I know sometimes those messages that specifically try to find meaning or beauty in death bounce off of you. So that was one big question in my mind, is how are the final 10 minutes of the game going to work on you? So I think it's fine to be sad, and it is kind of a very bittersweet type of ending. But I did find those last moments, as you kind of you join together the music of all your friends in this uh, uh, metaphorical collection of things to create a new song, to add your song to it and create something new and powerful and beautiful. I was incredibly moved by it.
So I think my only I don't know if problem is the right word, but I was so sort of overwhelmed during that point that I didn't really realize that the intent was that we were sort of together building a new universe out of our song. And like that's apparently just the impression that everyone gets, but for me that was sort of left subtextual, and it wasn't until later that kind of occurred to me, or maybe I even had to read it somewhere.
Okay.
And so it's not that, again, I'm not complaining at all. Like I think a tragedy, like a good tragedy is worth its weight in gold. And this is it's like, yeah, even if there is kind of an act of magical restoration that you do at the end, it's like your people are still dead. The Nomai are still dead. This is just sad. Yeah, there's a kind of silver lining. There's a kind of like, but it's all part of the great cycle. I don't think we're disagreeing, by the way. I just think it's like it just made me feel this real sense of like melancholy that I think, it like made me appreciate life more, right? Like that's what a good tragedy does, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree with. I am very similar to Matt in that I typically bounce off of stuff that tries to be like sad on purpose, or to be like death is okay, which I don't really think that's what this game is trying to do. It's just like telling a really beautiful story that's like that is also tragic, and yeah, it worked. It worked on me. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like the function of the story is that each person takes a slightly different meaning from it, and like because I tend to maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but I tend to identify with stories that try and attempt to find greater meaning or beauty out of something tragic and sad. That like that's the part that really pinged off for me specifically. Whereas I think you guys look at it with a little bit more melancholy at just like the sadness of kind of the inevitability of these things. I think that's fine, and I think that's a testament to the storytelling that like it worked as effectively as a game for you guys than it did for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty convinced that like, not to be an asshole or anything, that my read is the correct one. Is I think the read that they wanted to instill in the story of the game. But I don't fault y'all for that at all.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, so literally like an hour before we sat down just now, I beat the game again, which is one, funny thing about this game is that you can just
You can do it in 22 minutes or
beat
less.
it in 22 minutes, right? So I did that just because I wanted to refresh myself on like the mechanics and have it fresh in my mind to talk about. And I made sure to like talk to everyone and yeah, before you kind of do the final thing that you do, if you talk to everyone around the fire, it's pretty clear what the intent is here. It just kind of went over my head in that moment, and I think again I was overwhelmed by the power of the storytelling to the extent that I wasn't necessarily thinking analytically, which is to my mind like a good thing actually.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, it's a very emotional end. Like it's and once again, this is I think where the game really uses how it controls tension to its advantage, because like it sets you on this thing where you finally realize what you need to do. And by the way, like one of the most pleasurable clicks in my life of video gaming is the moment where I finally put together in my head like what the game wants me to do. Like I will never forget this actually, because I got to the center of the whichever one of the hourglass twins you go to the center of. I got to the center of it. I got up in the thing. I took the thing out, and I was like, "This is it. This is what the game wants me to do. This is the end." I took it out. I did it, and then of course, for some reason, I thought, "Oh, now the time's not going to loop anymore. We've done it. We've escaped the time loop." And I forgot. But that doesn't mean the sun's not going to explode. And so I died. It's funny that when you get to that point, the game just says, you're dead. Actually, you're just dead.
Yeah.
And so like I did that. I remember I was streaming. I did that. I died. I was like, huh. And I took a break and I stepped away from the computer. I went to the bathroom. I got a drink of water. And then like while I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking, like I was like, what am I supposed to do? And that's when like every bit, and because I had already visited the ship in Dark Bramble, I knew it was there, and I had explored it, and obviously not had the thing I need to stick in it. I need to remember what the names of these things are.
I think it's just a warp core.
Yeah, sure, a warp core. I didn't have it, but I felt like the game wanted me to put something there. I had the coordinates. I had it all. I just hadn't put it all together. And like in that moment, sitting at my kitchen table was like when I went, oh, and it all clicked. And it's just like one of the most satisfying moments ever when it just all clicked and came together. And I came back to the game. I remember sitting down the stream with the biggest smile on my face and sitting there going, I think I got it, guys. I think I got it. And you start the loop over and it just went. And I got it on that first loop. I managed to get there in time on the first loop. And so anyway, to get back to my point was you're like so tense in those minutes from the minute you start the loop to the minute you stick the core into the ship and enter the coordinates and press the button. Like you're so tense. And the first time I did it, I was not very efficient. So I was running out of time. I knew at that point that it was a 22-minute loop. I didn't do anything like set a timer, but I just remember like having a rough sense of the time in my head and knowing I think I'm getting pretty close here. I need to hurry it up a little bit. But you hit that, the ship teleports, and there was a part of me that was still not entirely certain if I was safe now, if the timer was over. And then you slowly realize that, oh, you've been teleported, forever away, so far away. I think that's when you get to like see the sun supernova from a distance. And you realize that that the clock is not on anymore, and like the sense of like profound relief and releasing of tension is so palpable in that moment that I think it does put you in a very interesting emotional state as you experience the final message of the game. So it was a long way of saying I completely understand why your experience was like that the first time you got there, Matt.
Yeah. But also, you know, at the same time, once you are conscious of the fact that you've broken the time loop and death is real, despite the fact that you can always just say like, okay, restart game and it's the same thing, there's something like you get so locked into the frame of the game that you're like,
Yeah.
well, no, I don't want to die. I need to beat this fair and square by its own rules, you know?
Yeah.
So it like mattered to you. You're
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
I
like
could really die, you know?
right, yeah, like the sun of supernova probably maybe 40, 50, 100 times by the time you get to the very end, right?
Yeah.
And that one, when you're at a distance, you have the thing that was resetting time plugged into the ship that got you here, and there is this profound realization of like, oh, I can't undo that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I must say I did get eaten by a fish the first time I tried it, which was just crushing.
Oh, I can imagine it is. I had spent so much time exploring Dark Bramble that I had gotten pretty good at navigating it by that point, but I was so nervous, like hand shaking on keyboard. Like I would do a thing where did y'all play keyboard and mouse, or did you play with a controller?
We played on Switch.
Okay.
Controller. PS5.
So the game tells you it's better with controller, but I'm pretty sure I played keyboard and mouse the whole time. And I got pretty good at managing the ship with that. So much so we're like halfway through tried to switch to controller, and I was just horrible at controlling the ship.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm very much a PC gamer, so I probably would have done a lot better with keyboard and mouse with this type of game in particular. But I eventually got pretty good with the controller controlling the ship as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about this because this is one of the few, maybe God of War is the only other time that I have like felt that I had mastered something where like you're flying around and you're just like, okay, I want to go and I want to turn the ship and I want to like do this kind of Millennium Falcon Star Wars maneuver where I fit between these two things and then invert and then land on this thing. And I just do it like without thinking. My hands just know how to do it, and there's something so satisfying about that. Especially, it's complicated. Like it is complicated. You got these like shifting gravity fields and all weird effects depending on what planet you're on, and you get a real feeling of like I am an ace who has mastered his ship. Like that's such a satisfying element of the game to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, especially when you're on that final loop race, right? When you're just like going as fast as you can. So you're like hightailing it for the ship, launching into the air immediately. You know exactly where the Hourglass twins are going to be. So you just like afterburner there immediately. You know exactly where you need to land, and you just like woof, as fast as you can, and you feel in control the entire time. It feels really good. I mean, I think, Matt, you and I have played so many games that we've done podcasts for on this show, and so many of those games, like, we're doing them because they're excellent stories and they're more story focused games, and the actual gameplay element of the game is pretty muted and not as important. I think one of the remarkable things about this is the gameplay is a pretty large element of it. Like being able to maneuver the world is part of the exploration, part of the archaeology, as you said, like traversing this world. And so it's very fun. It's just very fun. The ship controls are fun. The jetpack is fun. Even the moments where you just fuck up and break your ship or launch too high in the air and realize your jetpack's out of fuel and you're hurtling towards the ground.
Yeah.
All that always feels fun and never feels frustrating.
Yeah, and I respect their commitment to like mostly correct physics, which is something that I just, I have this thing in my brain that starts complaining the moment I feel that something has been tweaked in a way that's like, oh, they hacked that. Why didn't they just make it like actually Newtonian or something? And it's like, no, they actually did it here for the most part. There's a couple places where they help you, but I actually like the ways in which they help you. Like when you're landing, your ship like flips around a little bit to like help you land. And they do another thing in the DLC. We haven't talked about the DLC at all, but Yeah, like this is one of the few games to like actually pull off this kind of mechanic delightfully. I think
Yeah.
so often you get platformers that just have these little quirks to them that make it like you have to kind of overcome them to enjoy the game. But this always felt like perfectly well tuned, and when it was hard, it was like felt like an overcomable challenge, and not just like, oh, this has just been made hard on purpose
Yeah.
to be brutally difficult.
Just the idea of flying your little ship between the planets is such a fun, like, even if you didn't have these fun little set piece planets, just the idea of like, okay, everybody likes the idea of being like a space explorer and having your own little, Millennium Falcon or whatever. But space is huge. Space travel takes forever. How do you make that fun? Well, you make all the planets really close together and really small, and you kind of just very precisely tweak the timings and the gravitational strength so that going from planet A to planet B is quick while also feeling like a journey. Like you've got to target the planet you want to go to. You got to make sure you're not going to run into the sun, and then you got to either do autopilot, or if you're feeling fancy, just try to eyeball it. And like it's so satisfying, just that element of it, just flying around in your ship. So much of the time I would just be like, I don't know what I want to do right now. I don't even have a mystery I want to solve particularly, like nothing is pressing on me. I'm just going to kind of fly around and look. And I'd like look down at a planet and be like, oh yeah, the lava planet that shoots lava balls at a brittle hollow. Like, what's the deal with that? I don't
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And then you like go like, can I land on? Oh, you can land on it if you land on the volcanoes. And then you realize the lava level goes down gradually and reveals things. You're like, oh my god, that's so cool. And
Yeah.
there's no reason to go there really. It's just you're just like having fun flying around. It's great.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, once again, talking about like the careful kind of measure between holding someone's hand through a process and letting them go free. I think sometimes getting stuck and being frustrated can be the best thing for a game, especially a game like this, because it forces you to like reset your thinking and just maybe take, like, there were definitely times when I was doing a loop, I got to the end of something, realized I was either wasting my time or just not thinking about the problem correctly, and I just said, okay, like for this loop I'm just gonna go over here and just do something, and I'm gonna be thinking about the puzzles in my head as I do this, but I'm just gonna fly this way. And that the game allows you to do that, and like if it held your hand, you would just keep going back and attacking that one problem, instead of getting to really uh, explore. Like, one of the things that it took me the longest amount of time to do was like explore the home planet that we're on,
Yeah.
because like I hopped in the ship and I left and like I just did that, and it didn't occur to me that, hey, maybe like there's stuff to learn on the planet I started on. And it took me forever to do that, and like that is a thing that maybe I would have never thought of if the game was just directing me constantly.
Yeah.
The breadcrumbing is really exquisite. Like
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gives you these opportunities to, like, if you wander off, you'll just kind of be inadvertently connected to an entirely different thing, and then you're like, oh, here's another little thing to go and do. And like you said, they don't ever like tell you. That's maybe my favorite thing about the hinting system, is that they never tell you exactly what to do. They just
Yeah.
kind of draw a like outline that, if you have collected all of the clues, it sort of circumscribes, maybe try this general type of thing. But they're never like, go do this thing. It's like, there's a thing here. I mean,
Yeah.
one of them is like, literally just, you haven't explored everything here, or like there's this, it's one of the throwaway lines in the like in the hint map.
Yeah, and that's actually
Great.
sneakily important, because one thing I really like about it is like the game doesn't hold your hand, but it will tell you, hey, you've gotten everything in this area. Like, if you want to spend the next 2 hours exploring every nook and cranny of this thing, you can, and you might get more like visual storytelling by walking into houses or caves or doing something. But like, as far as the quote unquote plot goes, you've gotten everything here. Like, that is sneakily important, because like, again, you don't want to hold people's hand, but you also want to allow people the certainty of I have not missed anything here, because that's another like point of anxiety for me sometimes in games is I don't want to feel like I've missed things in games, and it is really kind of overwhelming sometimes. And I'm like, I'm worried. I want to move on. I want to go somewhere else, but I'm just worried I missed something here, and so I just keep at it. And I like that the game gives you that little thing it throws you is like, hey, you didn't miss anything here.
Yeah.
You found it all. You're good.
Yeah.
You can feel free to go somewhere else.
Yeah, they're good about making the sort of storytelling elements like prominent, where you don't really, I don't think I ever just like missed something because like my eyes didn't see it. Like they're very good about, if there's going to be like a data pad or a scroll or whatever they're called, it's going to be like glowing and you're gonna notice it. So that's,
Yeah,
I think
for
that's
sure.
important for something like this. Otherwise, you're just annoyed with yourself constantly.
Yeah. I think one of
it's like,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say they're somehow both not subtle, but also like don't give it away, which I think is the sweet spot for this kind of design.
Well, and I love how the game like is kind of sort of playing off of what the type of person you are too, because one of my favorite stories with this game is when I played it, my experience with it was I was on the main planet. There's okay, good, get in your ship and go explore, and the game goes, if you want to know a place to explore, maybe you should start with the moon. Just the moon circling I forget what the name of the, why can't I remember the names of any of the planets?
Something Hearth, right?
Hearth something, yeah.
Yeah.
Like but
Scared it out of me.
Yeah.
So the game says, why don't you go explore the moon first? And me, being the type of player I am, go, okay. And so I hopped in my ship and I went to the moon. And I said, I'm going to explore the moon now. That's what the game told me to do. The game told me to go explore the moon. I'm going to do it. But I, like I said, I was playing with a lot of other people, including our good friend Wildbow, who is a very different type of video game player. And he said, fuck you, I'm not doing that. And he went immediately to the Dark Bramble first. It's the first thing he did. And he kind of brute forced his way through Dark Bramble, figured out the trick with the anglerfish without the game telling him, and he made his way, I think, to the ship. That's like the first thing he did in the game, which is remarkable. And like he enjoyed the game just as much as I did and anyone else that experienced it. It's so fun how it's not only like completely open, but it's kind of also revealing as to what type of game player you are.
Yeah It's funny, I think I disregarded the instructions to go to the moon because I was like, that's just the training area. I want to go explore. And then of course, I honestly, it was like much later that I was like, oh, there's no my ruins on the moon. Oh, I didn't realize that. It was some important clue that I took forever to find.
Yeah, I'm definitely the sort of person that would want to go directly to the Dark Bramble.
The
but
one
Laura
place
was
they specifically tell you not to go.
Yeah. Laura really wanted to follow the main path, so I had to. I mean, I also enjoy. I enjoy playing games many different ways. So we ended up taking the circuitous route, or perhaps the intended path of the.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's intended. Like you're right, Scott. It's like the game is actually so well designed that you can kind of just do any walk of the tree, of the hint tree, and you'll eventually arrive at everything you need, and it won't actually feel like you did it wrong.
I don't think there's an intended path. I mean, I think the game tells you to go to the moon first because it's trying to kind of gently lead you into this open world. And it's so I'm gonna give you one objective, but really all the objectives are out there. You have it's clear that's the game tells you that there's other astronauts out there, and you can shine your radio thing at each different planet and pick up a song, so they're out there. And so it's like, hey, just while you're exploring, maybe go see how those guys are doing. Are they still alive? I mean, they're playing music, so I guess so. So yeah, I mean, it just wants to give you like one kind of piece of go do this, but it's not an intended path at all. I think it's just I am a type of person that is so used to playing games that just hold your hand and lead you along. The game says go to the moon, I don't even think about it. I just go to the moon.
Yeah. This is a very minor point, I guess, but like the tutorial is actually just delightfully sparse because the game is actually really simple to just pick up and sort of forgiving, right? Because like worst thing that happens is you reset the time loop. Um, but I just remember being so delighted when the tutorial is basically just like go down into the center of this planet that you're on, and of course, what's in the center of the planet? Just a big open zero G area, because that's what would be at the middle of a planet. And I was like, oh, they've thought about things. Oh, this is going to be fun. And like, that was just such a delightful opening salvo, just to be like the tutorial area is just a consequence of physics. And then the whole rest of the game is like that. That was just really gratifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's really cool for sure. I did want to like briefly talk about the DLC, and I want to preface this with Matt has not played the DLC. I think we were debating for a while about whether we wanted to wait to do this episode after you had played through the DLC or not. I think we basically elected to just do it now because you're a very busy man, and who knows if you're going to get to that DLC. I hope you will eventually.
Yeah.
So speaking in the vaguest terms about this thing, I heard that this was coming out and I was very excited about it, but I didn't play it for a while after it came out. And I think there was part of me that was a little bit nervous. There was part of me that was like, they did this thing, this incredible thing that I loved so much. And I was afraid that it was just kind of lightning in a bottle. And like any kind of DLC that they build could only possibly damage my opinion of this beautiful thing that they've created. And the one thing I will say about the DLC is it is different from how Outer Wilds in general works, but it's incredible and beautiful, and only kind of crystallizes the overarching themes of what the game is about to me. It's like they stuck the landing is my point here.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they created another story, another thing that is just perfect, and I deeply loved the DLC as well.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed the DLC. I felt that it was like tuned like one half notch harder
Yeah.
than the rest of
Mm-hmm.
the game, and tonally a little bit weirder. I think it was more difficult game, kind of scarier,
Scarier, yeah, definitely scarier.
mechanically a little bit different. But yeah, no, I think I kind of had the same reaction, which was like, I'm glad they didn't just try to do more of the same. Although I'm sure that would have also been great. I like that they tried to do this other different thing in the same world that still was like thematically consistent and still a lot of fun. We actually accidentally found the DLC area while we were trying to figure out how to finish the primary game, and that was funny because we're like, this is not right, and we had to bail on that and then
That's
come
so
back to it
funny because
later.
that's like one of the things I was kind of nervous about. Like not for me because I had already beaten the game when the DLC came out, but like if you just buy this game right now, like is that ultimately like a good thing that you stumble upon this whole, I mean
You
not necessarily side story, but kind of side story to the main story.
it was, I don't know if it's like video game playing priors and experience, but like it was pretty obvious that this was not part of the main story after like 1 minute of even just art style wise. It's like better assets, better textures and stuff. So it's like,
Yeah.
it was like, this has nothing to do with any of the other things I've been doing. Also, it's like completely disconnected in your hint map. So that's
True.
that's a
Yeah,
clue.
no, that's true. It'd be funny if we're talking about this whole thing and Matt's like, "Oh, that? Yeah, no, I thought that was just the game. I played that."
No, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, which is it's kind of a fun place to be in, actually, because it makes me excited. Like this conversation is more likely to get me into the DLC because I'm like, oh, there was something I missed. I need to go back.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm trying to think of things to say that don't say anything specific, but it's very, very good.
Cool.
There is one thing I wanted to talk about here at the end of this conversation, which is kind of like the tragedy of this game, in that this game came out within months of a game called The Outer Worlds, which was a giant. I think was it who published Outer Worlds? Outer Worlds was a like AAA like expensive game. That was like very heavily marketed, and it came out the same year as this game, 2019, and like so much so that if you go to Outer Wilds on Wikipedia, the first thing it says is not to be confused with the Outer Worlds. And I think that actually kind of killed this game as far as like just amount of people playing it, because like there was so much confusion at the time on what game you're talking about. Like honestly, when Elliot and Ruben said we're doing this game, I thought they were talking about the Outer Worlds first,
Oh,
which is like
oh.
an action role playing game that I don't think it's actually that good, as from what I understand. I never played it, but um maybe it is. I don't know. But
I think it
there
was just fine, right? It's like
sure.
it's like having one of the best games of all time being confused with this like totally almost forgettable but kind of okay RPG,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just it's tragic.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's just like this unfortunate timing of similar names, things that just happens, that this game got a little bit lost in that whole conversation. I think it's got a following now though. Like the people that love this game love it and they preach it constantly to people, and so it's one of those things that will continue to propagate, I think. And hopefully the studio gets to make other things. I don't actually know what what Mobius Digital is working on right now. Um, doesn't seem like they even have a Wikipedia page. I hope they exist still.
Yeah, and Annapurna sort of dissolved in like the last year as well,
Yeah,
so
that's true. I don't know. So they'll
it's
have to find a
probably
new publisher. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We might not see another thing from the studio again, and that would make me really sad.
It does seem like kind of a lightning in the bottle concept, though. Like
I think you're right, and but I think my point in bringing up the DLC was like I am coming out of experiencing the DLC. I am much more confident in their ability to make something that is not just Outer Wilds
uh,
again,
uh,
but is captivating and beautiful and wonderful in all the ways this game was. Like, I have a lot of confidence in this team's ability to do that if they're given the runway to do that.
that's good to know. That's cool. I did have one little sort of question. I just wanted to get people's sort of vibe check on
Sure.
if we are wrapping up. Um, I was, you know, I hope people take this in the spirit it's meant. Like the game doesn't look AAA, right? Like
Sure.
the
Yeah.
the textures, kind of the the poly count. There's a kind of cartooniness to it, and part of that I think is you already mentioned, like out of absolute necessity, because this is like a full physics simulation where everything is in memory all the time, and it just can't be it can't be that detailed. But also part of it is probably just their smaller studio, and these are enormous environments, and they just
Yeah.
couldn't skin them that with that much detail. But so the question, I guess, and this is just something that I keep thinking about for whatever reason, is like, do you think the game would have felt different if they had spent $50 million on like designing everything to within an inch of its life and making it look like realistic and
Hmm.
clean? Do you think that would have been better? Do you think that would have sapped some of the magic from it? What's people's opinions on this?
I'm probably it would have been a lot worse, honestly. Like I think there's some kind of curve here of like scrappiness quality trade off where like at a certain point getting more money makes something better, and then at a certain point you have too much money to know how to allocate it effectively, and then it becomes one of these n squared management problems where it then turns into every AAA game that exists and just doesn't have the magic anymore. So like maybe if they had twice the budget it would have been air quotes better, but I think if they had like 10 to 100 times the budget it would not have been as magical. That's my gut check.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think like the lo-fi kind of goofy cartooniness of the game is part of its charm. That like you meet these nomai, and they look like kind of freaky cartoons, and even the Herthians are kind of like just weird looking, and part of like how their animations are just a little stilted, the way they stand is a little goofy. Like I think all that's kind of part of the charm of the game, and I think it would lose something in that aesthetic if it went for like a triple A, quadruple A photorealistic, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
I don't think I would like it as much at all.
I agree. I mean, for me, it almost feels like an N64 game. If it's been 20 years since you actually played an N64 game and you forgot what N64 games actually looked like, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I kind of just agree with y'all. But it's like because there was this tension in me where I'm like, but I want like a really like realistic space flying around space simulator game. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine to want that, but that's just not what this is and not what this is trying to be.
Yeah. And I also like this game cost $25. It's an indie game in design and it's an indie game in pricing. And I think that's just the perfect. It's like not that I would not be willing to pay more money for this experience because I love this game deeply. This is like probably one of my favorite games, if not my favorite game ever. I would pay much more for that. But like as a barrier of entry, when you're not sure what this thing is, I think $25 is just kind of the sweet spot. And so any kind of aggressive budgeting that would require them to up to the $70 price tag that AAA games are wearing these days, I think is just the exact wrong move to make for a game like this.
There's also this sort of like capital allocation problem and like fundamental risk aversion when you're talking about like 150 $200 million budgets for AAA games, where they're not going to gamble on this kind of gameplay loop, and they're certainly not going to spend 90% of their money on making the gameplay like delightful, which is like what they did here. Or I don't actually know what their actual allocation was, but in like a $200 million game, you have massive departments for like, you know, voice acting and scanning and like motion capture for animations for like all of the things happening. And it's just like, it's almost like making a movie, and there's a much smaller team that's probably not even that much bigger than honestly the entire team that made Outer Wilds that does the game design stuff. And then the vast majority of the other money is this sort of mess of like beautification and content filling, which is just not really how you make games like Outer Wilds. I wish you could like turn up a knob that like made Outer Wilds AAA, but like I don't think we have the business technology to know how to do that kind of thing, honestly.
Yeah, like the first thing Activision is going to say is you need a gun. Like, why doesn't this guy have a gun? Why isn't he shooting things?
Yeah.
Can't you find like bugs on the planet? Can't there be a planet that's overrun by like bugs and we have to shoot them all? Can we do
and you
that?
have to get their like eggs, and you have to return the eggs back to your hometown to get levels. And then you can upgrade your gun with
eggs. But like, and like, don't you want like new skins for your ship, like cool skins? But like, we can't just give you the skins. Like, you can open this box and it'll have like a random skin in it.
Oh my god!
This video game executive, I heard him say this one time, and it stuck me ever since. Is he said, we can make the first 5 hours of any game filled with content. And what he meant literally was that they can just pad stuff into a game so that there's just so much stuff for you to do everywhere you look. There's just stuff everywhere. And he didn't mean like good stuff.
The goodness of the stuff is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I mean, I will never forget the thing that I think Blizzard said years and years ago, which is that the first World of Warcraft mount that they put on their cash shop made more money than the entirety of StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
Oh god. You guys are making me love this game even more.
I mean, so like the thing is, it's like we can get and make fun of these giant game studios making these boneheaded decisions as from an art perspective all day long, but like the other part of the problem is the consumer like happily eats it all up, right?
Yeah, right. No, I mean,
thankless business.
It's funny, you know, Scott, you just said it was your favorite game, and I was like, my immediate emotional reaction was like, I still think I like God of War more than this, but then like as the conversation evolved, I was like, how can you even call those two things the same art form? Like, God of War, first of all, you know, it is a AAA game, cost $100 million or whatever, is basically an interactive movie. This is just a totally different thing. It's incomparable. So
Yeah.
I don't find a real need to rank them. I just thought it was interesting that, but like we said before, it's meaningless to compare these things almost.
God of War, best movie of all time. Outer Wilds, best physics-based mystery platformer space explorer of all time.
There you go.
I mean, this is the perfect kind of comparison of like a blockbuster film and an indie movie, right? Like you just go to those things for completely different experiences, and
Yeah.
I want to live in a world where both of those experiences are produced and made in the quality of both of those games. Yeah, I love that God of War exists. I love that game as much as you do, Matt. Well, maybe not as much as you do, but I love that game a whole bunch. I loved my experience with that game, and I want games like that to continue to exist. But I also want games like this to exist. I want them to keep making more games like this. I want them to push the envelope as far as, how we can tell stories, how we can explore, how we can design games to make people abandon their preconceived notions about how to approach a game and the correct way to do things, and just let go for a few hours. And I love this game for that. I love it.
Yep.
Matt, play the DLC. Go ahead and do it.
I will.
Speaking of one of the greatest blockbuster films of all time, you want to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah.
So Matt, you talked about this movie on the podcast before because you saw it in theaters, and you told me about it. So I do kind of remember vaguely what you thought about this movie. So here's what I thought about this movie. I enjoyed it while I was watching it. I also think this is one of the worst films of all time. So I honestly thought when it came out, I like on Disney Plus, I like said it was Tuesday. I was like, Elise, we're watching this movie right now because I want to see if this could be something we could do an episode on, just like a full episode on. And like 45 minutes into the movie, I was like, I can't do an episode on this movie. Like, there's no way. It would just be me angrily shit talking the entire time. I think that this is like a perfect example of what's wrong with studio filmmaking these days. I think this is like lampshading the movie, where it's a movie that is trying to have pathos and say interesting things, but it's also a movie that's constantly trying to tell you it's okay that this is all stupid, and is like, isn't it stupid? Isn't all this so stupid? And then therefore, like, if we make fun of it and call it stupid, it's okay that it's stupid. Aren't multiverse stories so dumb? Like, look, I'm gonna have Ryan Reynolds look at the camera and say how sick he is of multiverse stories, but we're still gonna do one of those. We're still doing it, and it's just like it feels so cynical to me. In the and it's a bummer because there are like nuggets in here that I think are really good. I think Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine, Logan, he's good, and I think he has a genuinely good arc in this story, but everything surrounding him is so cynical and awful and like the worst of internet meme culture. I just actively despise it. I really do.
Is it like, so you know how like in the Matrix 4, the Wachowskis were basically just staring at the camera being like, we don't want to make this movie, but they were going to make it without us, so we're just going to make it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of screw you for making us do that. Is this a little bit Ryan Reynolds being like, I know this is going to make $1 billion, so I'm just going to do it and tell you about how bad it is? Or is it really just trying to have its cake and eat it too?
It is trying to have its cake and consume 20,000 pounds of cake at the same time. It okay. Is like like there's a moment in the movie where Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, turns to Wolverine and says, they're gonna make you do this till you're 90. And like, that's a funny joke. It's also profoundly sad because it's true.
Yeah, you just have to think about Patrick Stewart in the same franchise.
Uh-huh.
And like, look, I enjoyed the movie Logan. I don't quite think it's like the greatest movie of all time that some people feel about the movie Logan, but I do think, if not a perfect send off of this version of the character, it was a perfect send off of Hugh Jackman and Hugh Jackman's time with this character. And like, I want to see him move on from this and say, this was great, this was important to my life, and I'm going to give it this beautiful send off, and then I'm going to move on. And again, the movie says to you, isn't it fucked up that we're ruining this? But it's still doing it.
Uh-huh.
And that doesn't and it says, because I pointed it out to you and because I told you it's okay. And no, it's not,
Scott,
actually.
It's okay because it made like $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, like, I completely understand why people had a good time with this movie, because it is a film that is almost like designed in a laboratory to be a good time. Like that is what the movie is. It is absolutely stuffed with needle drops and slow-mo sequences that are both supposed to look cool and also, hey, isn't this absurd that we're doing another needle drop with another slow-mo sequence? And I swear to God, that building behind the two characters has blown up 6 times in the last minute. And it's like, it's funny and it's fun, but like, the instant it's over, you're like, hey.
Yeah.
Still making those multiverse movies.
I hate this. And like, it's so hard for me because I genuinely liked the first 2 Deadpool movies. I actually think those movies do sneakily have a lot of heart at the core of them, and moved me, because the character of Deadpool, like what he wants and what he's trying to get, and his growth through the course of those 2 movies, I think genuinely worked on me. And then we got to this, and I just despise it. I really do.
This is delightful. Yeah, it's funny because I didn't actively hate it. I think what I said was, while I was watching the movie in the theater, I was like laughing and smiling, and then I walked out of the theater, and like as I was walking to my car, I just like forgot about the movie completely and never thought about it again, because it just left no residue of any kind of drama or regard for the characters. Like you said, the basically totally non-functional on a narrative level, doesn't make you care about anything, has no stakes.
Yeah.
Kind of barely something there with the Wolverine character, but really nothing there with Deadpool.
The character of Deadpool in this movie is awful. He makes no sense. None of his motivations are really established in a believable way. And I think it's because the movie is so interested in doing the thing that people have always said Marvel does, which is like, they have to cut off any moment of pathos with a joke. And like, that Deadpool just becomes that concept embodied, where like, if we ever have a moment of actual pathos with the character of Deadpool, he has to immediately tell a joke to say like, hey, this is stupid, right? And it's just like, you lose all sense of who he is as a person and what he actually wants. Like, at some point I was like, wait, what is he doing this for? Wait, what happened with his relationship with his girlfriend? Why? What? Who?
Yeah.
Huh? And it's just like, it sucks, man. It sucks.
Yeah. It's funny. I was like relieved to hear that you didn't like it, because I felt kind of crazy that I was like the only person I knew who, again, I didn't hate it, but I was just like, I've only really heard good things about this movie, and it made $1 billion, and it just left me so cold. So the fact that you had a negative reaction warms my heart.
Oh, good. I'm sure I just pissed off a lot of people, because I do think a lot of people genuinely love this movie, and I want to be the absolute first to tell you that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with you for liking this movie. I enjoyed my time while I was watching it. Certainly, I laughed in all the places I should have laughed. But the longer I'm away from it, the more I dislike it.
So I think the frustration for us, if I can speak for you, is like, why didn't you just put in the extra effort to give the characters some grounding? Maybe cut out like 10% of the like stupid throwaway jokes that weren't really funny, of which there were a lot in there, and replace that with bothering to explain what Deadpool actually wants and what the stakes are for him personally, because and do it well. I'm not, because the thing is, they try to, but it doesn't land at all.
Yeah. Well,
for
because
me.
we've got to fit in this 47 cameos,
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
very important. I don't want to get into that because it moves into spoiler territory, but like,
But, I mean, I think the thing is, I've seen so many trailers now that I think I've been spoiled on like. It's not even like I seek them out. They advertise the heck out of this movie, and I think I've been spoiled on a good number of
yeah,
cameos. Just like seeing scrolling as one does, and be like, oh,
sure.
another one of those. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, the movie posits itself as kind of a farewell film for the Fox brand of comic book characters, right? Like, there
yeah,
are several cameos from Fox comic book stories, some of which I knew about before I sat down for the movie, some of which were a surprise to me. Um, but like, it's doing this really, I guess arguably interesting thing where it's trying to have this pathos with these, like, don't we feel bad for these like forgotten heroes of Fox films of yore and how they're just gone now because the studio no longer exists, and so these characters are just gone. But also, we're gonna like really make fun of them, like a lot. Like, we're gonna really make fun of them,
Uh-huh.
like okay. So, spoilers, I guess. Gambit is in this film,
uh-huh.
um, and um, so Gambit was not a movie that ever came out, right? They worked for a while on Gambit coming out, and Channing Tatum was in line to play Gambit, and that never happened. Well, Channing Tatum finally gets to play Gambit in this movie, except the movie is like 90% of Gambit's role in this movie is to be like, isn't this fucking stupid? Actually, like, Channing Tatum would make a terrible Gambit, actually, and his accent is fucking awful. Um, and like, that's not me like criticizing the movie. That's what the movie is saying. So like I just, how can, like, it's a perfect example of what you said, having your cake and eating it too. It's like, how can we try to build pathos and have these emotional moments for these characters, the tragedy of these characters essentially being abandoned by the studio system, while at the same time also being like, they sucked. The reason why there wasn't a Gambit movie is because it was a bad idea, and maybe that doesn't need a heroic goodbye.
No, I think my Straussian read of your whole take here is that they know that this was all bad, and that's the point. Like
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
the point of
I think
Deadpool the
so.
movie is that they shouldn't have made this movie
Yeah.
because this is all bad, and that made $1.5 billion.
It did. It did. I mean, like I said, the perfect movie of our time, perfect internet culture film for our time, and I think that's why it did so well, because that's
yeah.
that's what we want.
There's like the perfect encapsulation, like metaphor of it is that you have the two main characters. Their powers are stabbing and healing, like both of them. That's
Uh-huh.
both of their powers, and they fight each other several times, and other Deadpools. Can you think of a less dramatic sort of fight?
Completely meaningless fights.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But don't worry, because Ryan Reynolds is going to look at the camera and say, "I know you've been waiting for this, nerds. Here you go. Here's the thing you've been waiting for. I'm going to fight the Wolverine."
I mean, this movie is just a cynical work of art. It sounds like I would love it. This
No,
sounds great.
No,
I think
you would.
the thing I've learned in this conversation is Deadpool and Wolverine predicted the Trump presidency, essentially.
It's Daniel. The thing is, you will like it because everyone likes it while they're watching it. It's just
yes.
It's just there's nothing to it. Like, it's not a film you talk about later. It's a like, I recognize that. I liked Wolverine when I was a child. That's it.
Uh-huh.
I remember her.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I will watch it. You haven't convinced me to not watch it, which
I don't think I want to convince you to not watch it. I just do want to say it's the horseman signal of the end of studio filmmaking as we know it. So
okay.
Okay, that might be a little dramatic, but yeah, just not for me. Not for me. But also for me, because it's designed to be for me. It's all very confusing.
Yeah.
I have
What a
very confused
puzzle.
feelings about this.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we had for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on Outer Wilds, which I'm sure you do, or on Deadpool and Wolverine, which I'm sure you do, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on Twitter at doofmedia. Although, like, Twitter, guys, I think it's dying. I think it's really dying this time.
Can cancer ever really die?
I've watched our follower count plummet precipitously over the last few days, and I don't think it's because people are unfollowing us. I think it's because they're deleting their Twitter accounts.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of that, but we'll see.
The problem is the alternatives are just cesspools. So
I logged into Threads today, and I was like, "What is this?" I did not like it at all.
I mean, I have always hated Twitter. I hate Twitter no more than I ever did, I guess, is what I'll say. Anyway.
Yeah. Same.
True. Yeah. I mean, the only difference is now other people seem to be finally agreeing with us. So, yeah.
Yeah. Fair.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Setting aside all that business. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media and pledge at any of the available levels over there. You can pledge at our $10 level and get access to our newest show, which we'll be talking about the television show from, I believe the name of that podcast is Two,
a From podcast.
It's your greatest idea yet, Matt. I love it so much.
Thank you.
So we'll be going through that show over on our bonus podcast. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be out in a week or two, and you want to make sure you subscribe to get that, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Matt, I'm really excited for you to experience this show.
Yeah, I can't wait to get started on that. Also, please consider giving us a rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to talk with you. It's been far too long, so I'm glad we got you on here to chat about some excellent video gaming.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, it was great. Matt, play the expansion or the DLC so we can have Daniel back on to talk about it.
I will.
Okay, there we go. All right, folks, that's it for us this week. Next week on the show, I know we got something.
Who knows, man?
Something.
Yeah.
I don't. Deadpool and Wolverine. No, we'll figure it out. We'll see you all next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.